Good evening. Thank you for joining us for tonight's conversation. We're going to get started shortly. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Please drop us a note and let us know where you are joining from. Chris, how are you?
Oh, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Thanks for having us. We're all here. We're trying to fit in the frame.
We are happy to have all of you. We're just going to give it a few moments to let some other folks join. Um, but we are really excited about tonight's conversation. Hi, everyone.
All right.
Thanks to all of you who have tuned in. I see we have someone from St. Louis. Please feel free to just drop us a note and let us know where you're coming in from. Oh, we have Buffalo Urban League Young Professionals. All right, so New York, state of New York's in the house. Yay, rocking the boat. We have folks from Baltimore. So tonight's going to be a great conversation. We'll be starting shortly. Want to look out for our additional guests that'll be joining us. Looks like we have someone from the Philadelphia. Oh, look, we have fire. Bronx is in the house, so it looks they must have known you were coming on tonight. St. Louis County, awesome. All right, let me see if I can find our other guests, and we'll get started shortly. Okay. All right, how about we jump right in? And then when our other guest joins, I'll just make sure we pull her into the conversation. Well, so good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into tonight's Justice Now conversation, sponsored by the National Urban League. I'm your host, Jerica Richardson, and I serve as the Senior Vice President for Equitable Justice and Strategic Initiatives at the National Urban League. And tonight we're going to be talking about an issue that, quite frankly, doesn't get the attention it deserves. We're going to talk about tackling environmental issues and climate change as part of our overall fight and really advocating for justice for Black, Brown, Indigenous, Asian, and other marginal people from other marginalized communities across the country. And so I am very privileged to be joined by Chris Millenhouse. And Chris is currently the Director of Environmental Projects at Rocking the Boat, which is based in the Bronx, in the Boogie Down, right, Chris? So we're excited to have Chris and a number of his students join. Chris, why don't you introduce yourself and to introduce the students that you have with you and tell us a little bit about Rocking the Boat and the work that you do.
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having us tonight. We're super excited to be here with you. Yeah, I'm the Director of Environmental Projects here at Rocking the Boat. We are a youth development organization in the South Bronx. We have 3 different tracks of study: environmental science, wooden boat building, and sailing. So we are the environmental apprentice crew. As part of my role here, I also have the privilege of leading this amazing group of apprentices. Most everybody is from the Bronx, some from the neighborhood right here. And maybe we'll go around and you guys can introduce yourselves. I don't know, you want to do name and how long you've been in the program? Sounds good? All right. So just go for it.
Hi, Bobby, and I've been in the program for 2 going on 3 semesters now, which is like about a year.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Melissa Mendez, and I've been in the program since the semester of 2019, and it's been like 4 years I've been here. I'm a current senior.
Thanks.
Oh, my name is Nani. I've been here for almost 5 years now.
Wow.
Hi, my name is Mukhtar. I'm a senior, and I've also been here since 2019, so like almost 4 years. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you to all of you for joining us for this conversation. I really think it's an important one.
Absolutely.
So Chris, I would love to hear from you. A lot of times we hear the word climate change, climate justice, environmental justice, and kind of we hear them interchangeably. But when I think of climate justice, the picture that comes to mind is, Hurricane Katrina and a lot of the challenges that we saw there in New Orleans. And then when I think of environmental justice, Flint, Michigan sticks out in my mind, Jackson, Mississippi, a lot of places that are dealing with challenges that have to do with built infrastructure. Well, actually, I might argue that New Orleans also had some of the same challenges. Can you give us a little bit of background or kind of just explaining the difference or how these two different concepts intersect?
Sure. Bringing up Katrina makes me immediately think about Hurricane Sandy here in New York, and how we talk a lot in this program, not necessarily about how the storm comes, right? Like the storm hit New York more or less equally. We're a pretty low-lying city in terms of sea level, but we do a lot of talking here about the response to that, and how different neighborhoods the response is not equal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have frontline Black and Brown communities that in a lot of ways were left to kind of fend for themselves for days and sometimes even weeks. High-rise buildings and Far Rockaway, parts of Coney Island, parts of Staten Island, that people were left to fend for themselves and didn't get adequate resources. So that would be, I think, more talking about climate justice.
Mm-hmm.
And then environmental justice, and like you also mentioned, maybe New Orleans is a little bit of both. We're talking about areas we're talking about intentionality, right? Like places that it was, with redlining, for instance, places that were designed to keep BIPOC communities separate from more affluent white communities, and keep BIPOC communities not affluent in terms of having access to FHA loans and being able to purchase properties, things like that. So built infrastructure were intentionally designed programs that excluded people. So I think of that's how I personally think of environmental justice as opposed to climate justice.
Great. And I think along those lines, since you all are in the Bronx, I do want to lift up some information that my team shared with me. So April 2022, Representative Richie Torres, who is a congressman based in the Bronx, and other Bronx environmental justice groups announced a new initiative to combat air pollution in the South Bronx. He stated, communities of color like the South Bronx have long been exposed to elevated levels of air pollution that gravely impacted all aspects of our health, physical, mental, and emotional. And so in February of 2022, the Environmental Justice Air Quality Monitoring Act was introduced, which would help address pollution in environmental justice communities by expanding access to local air quality data. So how are you and your students, who I know have been doing incredible work, I know a number of them have been with you for a while, how do you think this project can help bring change to the Bronx community, and how can other young people or community members help shed light on this issue?
Yeah. What I think is really unique or great about the Environmental Justice Air Quality Monitoring Act is talking about data transparency. And we actually here in the Environmental Job Skills program have a new project coming up. And we also were prepared a little bit for these questions. So I'm going to pass that off to Armadi to talk about the project, which is directly related to your question. So let me just shift it down here.
Hi. So basically, at Rocking the Boat, we're starting a new project that's gonna basically let the community be able to see what's actually going on with the air that they breathe, and like what's just basically being transparent with everybody about what's going on with pollution in this area that involves like trucks and construction and things like that.
Great. And so, do you get the sense from the community and your peers and others that they're excited about this project and they understand and really understand the importance of it?
I think that this project is actually like a really amazing thing because it makes the people in our community feel like heard, and like knowledge is power. So it makes like the people in the community feel like they have a say in what's going on in their community, and it gives them like more of like a way to see what's actually going on. And like I know like some people personally that would love to see the things that are going on in their community so they can know how to act on it, and they can actually like be able to have the data to know what they're speaking about. And when they go to these like big places like to senators and like city officials, so they can like demand things that they need and be able to like have a voice and understand what's going on.
Well, thank you for that. Does anyone else from the group want to share, Chris?
Anybody else want to share about that?
She pretty much said it all.
The sculpture. That's good.
I mean, yeah, for like our air quality project, we were planning on like building a sculpture in the park.
Oh, here I am. Hello, everybody. I'm sorry.
Hi, no problem, Paula. We were just talking with the students from Rocking the Boat a little bit about some of the work that's happening in the Bronx. And so please continue with your thought, and then we're going to come over and introduce you, Paula, in 1 second.
Okay. Right. As I was saying, like, for our air quality project, we were planning on getting a permit to build a sculpture within the park, and on that sculpture is going to be a QR code that the public can scan and have access to the air quality data that we have been collecting. So it's like a information database that all of the
well, thank you for that. I mean, I think it's really important that we make information available to the public. And I want to say thank you to all that you all are doing at Rocking the Boat to educate your community and others about these challenges and these issues. I think it's so important. And I am happy to introduce our other guest this evening, Paula Brooks. Paula is Environmental Justice Program Manager at the Hoosier Environmental Council, which is an environmental advocacy organization. And so you all are based in on the East Coast in the Bronx, and we have Paula who's joining us from the Midwest, from Indiana. Paula, welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I need to let you know that I'm also a Brooklynite.
Okay. Love that. So New York through and through with the splash of Midwest. Well, Paula, we're so happy that you were able to join us. We'd love to hear just briefly a little bit about your work, your organization, and really why you think this issue is so important and why you've gotten involved in the environmental justice space.
Well, environmental justice framework, it touches every aspect of life. So it's just not limited to pollution. We're also talking about the equitable distribution of resources, public investment. We're talking about food security. We're talking about education. So environmental justice, I like to say the definition is that it's a human right to live in a clean, safe, and healthy environment. So that just covers everything. I have a background in community development, and I actually was born and raised here in Indianapolis, and I had to come back home because my mom needed me. And I am third generation in a historic Black community that was decimated by a series of urban redevelopment schemes. And so I came back home, and my neighborhood is basically gentrified, but it's the only neighborhood on the near downtown that we have Black homeowners still. And I was seeing people trying to cross the street, and basically in wheelchairs, dodging cars, almost cars going 50 miles an hour. And it just made me see red. I also was faced with the erasure of my neighborhood's heritage and history, and that motivated me. But I think the main motivator for me is that my mom's house is on a busy street that is now an interstate access road, and she had to leave her house just because of the traffic, the trucks, the pollution. She ended up on a vent, and I use those experiences to motivate me to kind of advocate for people like my mom, just regular, working class people, and so I've been very successful, and I like to say lucky as well, to have kind of been able to create this position and this project that actually centers these residents, because I call them, or me included, we're invisible. Um, Decisions are made. I focus on land use a lot, because you with the gentrification, and you all are New Yorkers, so you know how money rules real estate, and a lot of times the decisions are not made in concert with the community that's right there. And these people have lived in these neighborhoods for generations. And now you have this new investment coming in, and I just want to make sure that they receive the respect that they deserve. So I'm just working for my people.
Thank you for that, Paula, and thank you for sharing a little bit more about your background and really what prompted you to get into this space. I'm really glad we're having this conversation. I know we're touching on climate issues and challenges. We're talking about environmental justice issues, but kind of going back to climate, I think there will be plenty of people in this country that may still need convincing about climate change and whether or not it's real. I think there's a lot of skepticism, both domestically and internationally. And at the same time, I do feel like when we are hearing about these issues, more often than not, it's being elevated by our young people and people from, millennials and younger, Gen Z. I mean, folks from younger generations. Why do you think this issue has really captured the attention of young people? And what can young people do to really engage and make sure that it's something that doesn't get left on the back burner? And Chris, obviously, you are working with a number of young people right here, so I would love to hear from you and your cohort. And And Paula, please feel free to chime in if there's anything that they say or expand on anything that they share about this topic in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to give the young people right here a second to think about this and answer this. But I mean, just from your question, my gut answer is that they're angry. You know, it's I think that you know, from working with young people and seeing what previous generations have done to the climate and to the planet, they're angry about that because it's going to alter their futures. You know, I mean, it's something that you know, probably towards the end of my lifetime, I'll probably start to see the real bad stuff happening. Definitely gonna see some things start to happen, but you know, obviously, the younger you are, you know, the longer you have to deal with these negative externalities that are in my opinion, a product of greed. So, what do you guys think? Anybody? Yeah, go. Somebody has something. Go for it.
I was just gonna say, like, back to what Chris is saying, like, us as young people, we see, like, and sometimes learn about these, like, terrible things that are being done, and we want to, like, go on and, like, make a better future for our future children, and not have to, like, have the next generation grow up the way that we did. Like, it makes the most sense to me that the young people are so, like, angry and so passionate about these things, because it's things that are important and things that people, like, usually overlook. And the thing that I really appreciate about this generation is that when it comes to making a change, we don't stop, and we're, like, very resilient until it happens.
And I also feel like essentially it's about.
Speak a little louder.
Am I loud enough?
Yes.
Okay. Essentially, it's also about spreading awareness and showing people how important it is for people to understand, like, you know, the environmental issues and spread environmental justice. Because, you know, in a lot of people, you see that there's, like, no fight left. But, you know, we kind of have to motivate and empower each other to keep this topic alive and to actually, you know, do something about it.
I also think a factor is quality of life. I think there's a recognition that the environment and our climate impacts our quality of life. Just for instance, the flooding in the city, you know, that's a function of climate change as well. And I remember seeing that gentleman in, I guess he was in Brooklyn, swimming with his child in his basement apartment, you know, because of the flooding with Sandy, Hurricane Sandy. You know, that's traumatic for anyone. But those kind of repeated extreme weather events, I think that they're really making an impact. I don't know what you guys think. You Gen G back there.
I don't even know, what generation are you all now? What, you know, I don't want to get it wrong.
We're Gen Z.
You're Gen Z. Okay, look, Paula was on spot on. I'm late.
So did that impact you? Going through Hurricane Sandy is like preteens, teenagers.
I don't remember Hurricane Sandy
Yeah,
because
I think that was the big storm before they were around. You had more recent one though, right?
No, it's
but I wanted to add on that people who don't think about climate change, it's because they live in luxury. They live in a luxury that they could ignore climate change. You know, like us being based on Hunts Point, we don't have that luxury. We're surrounded with factories and have the highest asthma rates and highest poverty rates in the South Bronx. Meanwhile, someone who lives like in Central Park, like around Central Park in Upper Manhattan, they have the luxury to ignore those things because they don't see it, they don't experience it. Yeah.
I also want to add that you know, the effects of climate change is like I see it. Even this summer we had a lot of storms, like heavy rain that came. You know, whenever we're doing water quality on the river, we see how the heavy rains affect the water and the ecosystem around the Bronx River. How a lot of the sewage system goes into the river, and like even for me personally, my family has been affected. Like I remember last year, the 1st of September, there was a heavy rainstorm that even caused a lot of the public schools to be closed. And my cousin's house, like he lives in a basement unit, and his house got flooded, and he had to spend like literally collecting bucket out of his house, even though like, and this shouldn't happen. Like, you know, we're in America, considered a first world country, and something like this should not be happening. So I feel like, you know, a lot of our political leaders and just everybody in general should be taking that action to move forward and like solve climate change, because it is a huge issue. That
Yeah, it's definitely something that's had a huge impact. And thank you all for sharing your wisdom and experiences with this issue. I think the frustrating part is a lot of this could have been prevented if people were educated, if they cared, they chose to act sooner. And so it's why we find ourselves where we are right now. It also makes me think a little bit about environmental justice. And when I think of environmental justice, or quite frankly, injustice, it often feels like racism by design. And so, Paula, I do know that the last month, a new division was created at the Environmental Protection Agency. It's a new office within the agency called the Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. So it's tasked with ensuring equity and funding for underserved communities, conducting outreach to raise awareness, and enforcing civil rights. In addition to the Inflation Reduction Act, which dedicated $2.7 billion to environmental justice. Do you feel like this new EPA division and this federal funding, you touched on this a little bit earlier, really will aid in improving environmental conditions in communities of color?
Oh, I'm very hopeful. The two bills, it was also the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as infrastructure bill that is bringing billions, really billions, to underserved communities. Now, it's the responsibility of the local elected leaders, as well as NGOs and Gen Z, the voters, to make sure that the monies are distributed equitably. But this is the first time that this much money has been allocated towards environmental justice as well as restorative justice. So, for instance, there's grants that are being given out by all the various agencies with the goal of justice. EPA, the office that you mentioned, what's really wonderful about that office is that they're bringing enforcement people out into the regions. Prior, the enforcement people were in DC. And then you had the regional offices. They're deploying 200 staff members all over the country to interface with communities. That's a huge step. So I'm very hopeful.
Well, I'm hopeful too, but I can't help but think about what we've seen in some cities that have received federal dollars, or not cities, I'm sorry, states that have received federal dollars. But what's ended up happening is it may get into the hands of the governor or the legislature, and it doesn't end up making its way down to the communities that need it most. We've had a conversation recently, this fall actually, with advocates from Jackson, Mississippi, and that was one of the challenges that we saw there. You know, we've heard about stories about the water and a lot of the challenges that the community has been facing. Paula, you talked about you know, communities getting involved and interceding to help make sure those funds get where they're needed. Are there any kind of you know, any advice or strategic guidance that you would give to folks who might be watching, who might be in a community or reside in a community that is eligible for those federal dollars, but there's a concern about it actually making its way down to those folks who need it? What can they do?
I want to preface this by saying one of the special initiatives in these monies is that they have to go to 40% of the benefits have to go to what is called Justice 40 communities. And these are communities that meet certain thresholds like pollution exposure, educational attainment, poverty rates. That's never been done before. So I just want to put that out. And I think, you know, especially for you all in New York, you're blessed that you have a lot of organizations that have traditionally advocated for social justice. I mean, you know, just the national network, Al Sharpton, he's been around for decades, especially with police brutality. And you can see the fruit of his work today. So my advice is to just get involved with organizations that, you know, their mission may appeal to you, or start your own organization and bring your friends in and advocate. And what that means is showing up to meetings. It means writing letters. It means doing media broadcasts like this. It's making noise, showing your face, but you have to show up. And again, because you're in New York, because I can kind of compare that to where I am here in Indiana. So I feel like I'm living like when I was in my 20s, you know, in terms of where people are mentally. But you're in New York and you just really have wonderful role models to show you what advocacy is all about. So it's really just showing up. That's like number one.
Thanks, Paula. Chris, do you and your students want to add anything to what we just spoke about, what Paula shared? You know, if you and Rocking the Boat were to kind of highlight for our viewers what you think some of the most pressing climate or environmental issues are of today, what are the ones that are top of mind for you all? I think you touched on air quality as one of them earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think that air quality and air pollution in general, I would say, to me, that's the most pressing issue. You know, the burning of fossil fuels. You know, this air pollution, it puts out particulate matter that hurts people and makes them sick, and it's also what is making, you know, putting carbon into the environment and you know, really kind of moving climate change along. So yeah, I would say air pollution for sure. Did one of you guys want to talk about the river? Right?
Water quality, I think, is another issue. Clean water.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about water pollution and how like it's also like I wouldn't say that there's only one environmental issue that is the most pressing. I feel like all of them are the same equally, but water pollution is also a big thing because we do water quality testing here at the Bronx River, and we test the pH of the water, meaning its acidity and the dissolved oxygen and its nitrates. So usually like when the summer comes, there's a lot of algae bloom, which prevents a lot of the oxygen going into the river, which blocks the sunlight going down to the bottom of the river. And that causes a lot of fish to end up, lying. We see a lot of fish lying dead on the shore. So we see a lot of that type of pollution. And acidity of the water can also change so I feel like air pollution and, water pollution is all equally the same, and it's both pressing issues.
And for those communities that do have to rely on those bodies of water for water to drink, and it doesn't have like a good filtration system, those people can get sick, God forbid, like those communities have to do with groundwater, it's not safe, it's unhealthy. So but yeah,
Oyster Project.
Sure. Go ahead.
Sorry, I also wanted to add, how there are other different countries all around the world that experience this. Like, a couple months ago, Pakistan had a major devastating flood that flooded a third of the country, and millions of people got displaced. And in India, they have so much air pollution that the lungs of their children are as black as, cigarette smokers. So that's something that affects everyone, whether, you like it or not.
All those incredible points. Oh, go ahead.
To add on to what they were talking about with the river, nitrates is what cause algae bloom, which comes from the sewage being untreated. It's basically poop, and when it's untreated through sewers, it just go and then cause algae bloom. A project that we are doing to prevent this is a Billion Oyster Project. So oysters naturally, one oyster can filter 50 gallons of water and filter the nitrates. So we are creating these oyster farms down by the river, and we're testing it out and trying to implant 1 billion oysters along the Hudson River and the Bronx River to help ease the situation.
I love that. I didn't know oysters could do that. So thank you all for sharing that. I mean, this is important information that people need to know, because so many of us are struggling with this. My husband has asthma, and he lived for years in an environment where the asthma rate is high because of air pollution. So many of our communities across the country are now in places where you're seeing, whether it has been more recently in Newark, we're talking about Houston just had one. I mean, where there are boil water notices, partly because of the industry, partly because of the way things were designed in particular communities, but it's impacting folks' livelihoods, their health, their families, and others. So I think these are all great points to make. And I do want to say, this is a conversation that we need to continue to have on future shows, and I think we here at the National Urban League are committed to doing that. But I just want to thank everyone that has joined us. I want to thank Rocking the Boat, and I want to thank you, Paula, and your organization, really for all the work that you all have been doing. I know we are starting to run short on time, but I just want to give both Paula and Chris and any of Chris's students, if you all want to chime in, just really if there's some final words of wisdom or thoughts that you want to share on climate change, climate justice, environmental justice. I think I've learned a lot in this conversation. I know a lot of the folks that have tuned in have as well. But if there's any final thoughts you have or any recommendations you have on how folks can either connect with you or get involved in other organizations that are doing the work. Paula, I'll go to you, and then back to Chris and Rocking the Boat to close us out.
Well, I just want to say that I'm very impressed with you all, the level of knowledge that you have. I wish I had that at your age.
Me too, Paula.
Talking about the water quality and all that, but I just want to encourage you not to give up. Life is a series of ups and downs, and you're not going to win every battle, but don't give up. Just keep pushing through, and one day that curtain is going to open up, that sunlight is going to shine down, and it's going to make all your hard work worth it, but you just got to keep at it.
Thanks, Paula.
Thank you, Paula. I have to agree with you about how impressed I am by these young people that I have the privilege to work with every day, and it gives me their energy and hope, really, and enthusiasm towards this work. It makes me feel a lot better about all of these things. Yeah, Gen Z, I think, to the rescue.
Right. Especially because, the South Bronx always gets such a bad rap of how horrible it is. But I can tell you, I love 3rd Avenue and Willis. Just coming out of the train, a lot going on, but the energy. So don't let anybody tell you that, you're victims. You're not victims, you're warriors. You're fighting for your people, and that's really important.
And that's beautiful. And when we're talking about the South Bronx, it has always been a place of innovation and creativity. And so I just thank you all for continuing that rich legacy and really confronting one of the major justice issues of our time. So thank you, Paula. Thank you, Chris. Thank you to everyone from Rocking the Boat. Thank you for our fearless Gen Zers that are out there doing the work. It was so great having this conversation with you. And we look forward to staying connected. To all of you who tuned in, please understand that when we're talking about climate change, we're talking about climate justice, when we're talking about environmental justice or injustice, however you want to name it, recognize that these are not just the issues for tomorrow. They're issues that we have to face and confront today in order to ensure that we are creating a better tomorrow for ourselves, our families, our children's children, and anyone coming behind us. We have a huge responsibility to do the work. And I'm just so thankful to all of my guests who have joined us today for doing the work. Thank you again for tuning in to the National Urban League's Justice Now conversation. And I leave you with our final parting words that we have on every show. Remember, the time for justice is always now. So you know what? Get up, get involved, and do the work. Thanks all. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Everyone have a
You too. Bye-bye.
great, thank you.